Oh, well, happy Sunday, everybody. It's been a bit. It's been a minute since I've sat in this chair. And so it's great to be back. Thank you, Jeff. I thought this would be a great opportunity to give a throwback to the inspiration music that we had for the first 100 episodes here. And I don't have to worry about telling Randy because he's probably not going to watch the show anyway. So, hi everybody. My name is Andy. It is a miserable day actually in the Hudson Valley today. We had a tropical storm come through yesterday. It's cold. But that's, you know what, when it's cold and rainy and miserable outside and you don't want to be outside, that's the perfect opportunity to sit in your house and watch Logik Live. So I want to say it's great to see you all again. I want to say hi to my friends Michael Landon, Valentine. I'm so great to see you, man. As Yola is here, of course, I can't say enough to thank yous to Jeff Kyle for filling in and kind of just doing such an amazing job these past several weeks on Logik Live. I don't know what lunatic set up this system, Jeff, I mean, it's me that I gave it to you, but when I got back into the seat today and had to set up a show for the first time in a long time, I was like, oh my God, who put this thing together? But you did an amazing job. Thank you so much. Frank, it's good to see you. Oh, wow. Carlos is here. Mark Wellington is in the house. Simon Holden. I see Ralph. I see Jan, David Kreitz, Finn. Hello, hello, hello. This is wonderful. We're going to talk storage today with Doug Ricketts from Synology. And, oh wait, the music just turned kind of introspective. I really just want to tell you all how much I missed you and how much I missed Logik Live. It is great to be back. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I don't know if Randy's out there. This fade is for you, brother. See, some things I still remember how to do. It's like riding a bike, right? On a cobblestone road. Hi, everybody. My name is Andy. Welcome to Logik Live. We are going to talk storage with our friends from Synology in just a minute. But first, I'm going to take you through the slideshow, which is here. And then I push this button over here. Yes, it's all coming back to me, really. I just forgot to read the first slide. This episode of Logik Live is brought to you by AJA. Together with Flame since 2006, these guys make the best video gear in the business. If you need anything in terms of getting video into or out of your Flame, be sure to reach out to our friends at AJA. Thank you always for supporting Logik. We also want to thank HotSpring, the future of VFX outsourcing. If you need help with any of your jobs, be sure to reach out to them at thehotspring.com. And I want to make sure everybody's aware that we have new affiliate links with our friends at Boris FX. You can save 15% on everything that they make, but you have to use the new affiliate links. And you can find all of those either in the YouTube description or at logik.tv/BorisFX. There's a listing of all of the affiliate links there. So be sure to take advantage of those. I actually got one, someone 2 days ago, actually a friend of ours, Jeff, I'll tell you off the air, just purchased, I think it was like 7 licenses for their company and was able to use this code. So I want to thank everybody for supporting our friends at Boris and at the same time supporting what we're doing here at Logik. Speaking of checking out the Logik merch store, be sure that you do. I keep seeing these things popping up all over in the wild. And I know at like the IBC event a couple weeks ago, we had some Logik merch there. If you want to look your best while you make your best, be sure to outfit yourself with some stuff from the Logik merch store. And a super wonderful, huge Logik hug to all of our patrons from Patreon. We literally could not do what we do without your support. And the support that you provide makes Logik available to everyone in the community. So I want to thank our 161 patrons for their generous support of what we're doing here at Logik. If you'd like to become a patron, get yourself a challenge coin and some access to exclusive content, like the Q&A that we do with our guests after the show. You can head on over to patreon.com/LogikTV and become a patron. If you haven't already, and you really have no excuse not to, please sign up for the forum. It's where the best conversation in the Flame world is happening. And thank you, Randy McEntee, for making the forum the amazing place that it is. I think Jeff shared these last week, but I just wanted to share again some photos from the Logik get-together at IBC. It seems like everyone had a great time. I wish I could have been there. I see my friend Josh Lawrence in the back on the right there. And I also couldn't believe how many pictures Sinan was in. The guy who's known for expressions in Flame has a different expression in every single photograph. I wonder if the beer had anything to do with that. But I want to thank Christoph Zaplatal for organizing this event. It's absolutely wonderful, and I'm glad everyone had a great time. I want to thank our sponsors for supporting that. Speaking of having a great time, you can always jump over onto the Logik Discord for real-time conversation, screen sharing, problem solving, anything you need. That is free. Also, I want to thank our moderators, it's Jeff and Randy on that. And you can get that for free by signing up over at logik.tv. Oh, Sinan says that's because I took all of them. Yep. And just a quick shout out about Logik Academy. These are the free tutorials that we've made and have put up on YouTube. We've covered a whole wide range of topics. We have, and I'm moving, Jeff, I have to move all these windows out of the way. This is terrible. We have, this is a pain that only Jeff would know because and Amanda, because they've run these shows with this app that we use. But we've covered things like Connect to Conform. That was Jeff's amazing. I think it's a 3-parter on the Connect to Conform workflow, and then a 2-parter on the image node workflow. We then had all kinds of content from Randy McEntee, intro to using NDI, 8-minute aces, which I use about once a month to kind of relearn all the color management stuff that I need to know. I did one on beauty techniques in Flame. There was one that Randy did on the machine learning time warp tool from Andrei Toloshny. He also did one called My First Linux Flame. If you want to build your own machine, that's the perfect guide. That's what I used. And then, of course, we have the Logik portal. Thank you, Mike Vaglianti. And the 2-parter from Sinan on the particle system, which is excellent. And then an intro to Matchbox shaders from Graziella. All of these, again, are available for free at logik.tv or on YouTube. And I want to thank Autodesk for supporting Logik Academy. Speaking of our friends at Autodesk, Flame 2024.1.1, that's a hot fix, is out. So if you're running 2024.1, please go ahead and download 2024.1.1. And I want to thank the dev team there for all of their hard work and everything that they do for the Flame community. Okay, let's see. We're back. Okay, great. We're going to talk storage today with Doug Ricketts from Synology. But before we start, I want to make sure everyone has enough time to do this. In the YouTube description, whoops, that's the wrong button. Jeff, I should have practiced more. Here it is. In the YouTube description, I put a link to a survey. Go ahead and fill out the survey to enter your name in for a chance to win a Synology DS224, which we're going to give away at the end of the show. But you have to fill out the survey in order to get your name on the list. Don't worry, the spinning wheel, the music, all of that will still be a part of this process. But this is what you need to do if you want to get your name into the list. So I want to invite my guest on today. His name is Doug Ricketts. He's from Synology. These guys make some of the most amazing storage tools in the business. And when I started working for myself 18 months ago, I had nothing. And then with the help of Randy McEntee, I bought my first Synology, and I don't know what I ever did without them. So I'm going to bring Doug on. How you doing, Doug?
I'm great, Andy. How are you doing? Hope everyone
so
else
far
is
so
doing
good.
Well. Cool.
Yeah, so far I'm. This is good. It's like I feel like I'm home again. This is great.
Very cool.
This is great.
Yeah, I loved the introspective moment there early on.
Right?
It was fantastic. It was good.
It's good. It's like centering.
Yeah,
You know?
I'm so happy to be a part of that.
Oh, wonderful, man. Thank you. Well, we appreciate you. I figure we should just dive right in. And why don't you just give us an intro or an overview into Synology and the kinds of products and solutions that you guys offer?
Yeah, sure. So I think Synology at its core really is data storage. That's what we're most focused on, right? And that is really the role of our network attached storage systems in most business environments. Now, one thing that we provide on top of our storage hardware are all of these great solutions that normally you'd be paying licensing for, right? You'd be paying, so in some cases, enterprise companies paid millions. In some cases, smaller businesses pay hundreds of thousands, right? For things that ought to really be included in the environment. And that, I think, that is what Synology, I think, contributes the most to the market. You buy the hardware, you get the software, you get the solutions, and the flexibility to use really anything in the back end that you'd like.
Oh, I agree. I am constantly amazed at the additional value that I have in my Synology devices that I didn't know I had. Because ultimately, I'll either see something on a blog, or I'll be talking to someone on the forum, or another Flame artist I see out in the wild, and
Right.
we're trying to solve a problem. We got a new job. A job came in. I mean, I had one, or we had one with my partner Randy. Yeah, Mark had just brought it up here, where he's in Chicago, I'm in New York. We were going to work on a job together, and I was assuming that we were going to be using like file sharing services to send stuff back and forth, and Randy just went, no, 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 no. I can give you, access to my Synology. You can mount it like a local drive. It's like a two-person cloud. Everything between the two of us will be in sync. And I was like, wow, what does that cost? You have it, So and so on and so on and so on. It's really a wonderful ecosystem you guys have, like an operating system on top of a storage unit.
That's awesome, Andy. Yeah, no, I'm really happy to hear that. I mean, that's what our, I think, product managers identified really early on in Synology's life. We started in 2000. So at this point, we've been around for a good 23, 24 years. And, at our root, we are software. So, this isn't a strategy that I would imagine going away ever, right? This is something that we want to provide for our clients and the value I think that the solutions add. So it's great that it's been working well for you.
Cool. Well, I was wondering then, or I thought maybe what we do to start this off. I know some people put questions in the forum about like specific things, the questions they had about working with Synology. I have some things prepared where I can show off how I'm using it here as a
Sure.
flame artist. So I have a feeling either way is a win. So maybe what we'll do is I'll start. Let me just start by showing what I have here and the system that I put together. So, like I said back at the beginning of the show, I had before I went and started working for myself, I just had an attached. I think it was a 2-drive G-RAID. That was my life. That was my server or whatever. And I ended up buying. I'm going to try to rotate the camera here. You can see it there. I ended up buying a Synology 1621 XS, I believe it is. It's a 6-bay unit, and I populated it with 8 terabyte drives because that's all that I could afford. And it was something that everybody who's interested in Synology should check out. Let me go back to Safari for a second. Is if you go to the website, you guys have this thing called the RAID calculator on your website, which is just an amazing tool to visualize how much storage you're going to get out of the drives. And you can kind of play around with what size drives you want to get. You can mix and match capacities, and it'll show you how much usable space you have and things like that. So definitely check that out to anybody who's going to work with Synology or wants to get into the Synology ecosystem. But I went ahead and got the unit. I filled it up with drives. There's no tools required. Everything kind of slid into trays, and you could populate everything easily. Any questions that I had were, I mean, there's so much content out there for like on YouTube for how to go ahead and do all this stuff yourself. And I have a 10 gig Ethernet kind of network here in my office. So the unit has, I think, 5 1 gig ports on it, but there's a slot, an expansion slot. So I put a 10 gig card in there, and I was kind of off to the races. And then I went ahead and launched this. And this is where I'm going to probably ask you to take over. And this might be a good opportunity to start showing people part of like the Synology ecosystem. But you control your Synology via a web page or a web interface to the Synology operating system. I know it's called DSM. But this is where you control everything. So maybe this would be a good opportunity or a good place to hand it back over to you. Because I know certain people had questions about like how do I set up my Synology? How do I configure it for a Mac or Linux? So maybe we'll do that. Let me bring up your screen, and we'll
Sounds
go from
great.
there.
Sounds great. Okay, so I think one of the questions, there was a little bit of conversation around SMB environments, right, on Mac, and how that is sort of panning out in general. So SMB obviously is newer to Apple's environment, right? I think I want to say it was Big Sur that issued SMB, and when we go into our control panel here, we can actually go to File Services, and then we can enable SMB services if you don't already have it enabled. Before, anyone with a Mac environment, right, would probably be going to AFP, turning on AFP. AFP has now been deprecated. They're not actually deploying it anymore at all. But in terms of the use between SMB and AFP, you just enable SMB, and then maybe for some advanced settings, you might want to kind of make sure that your maximum and minimum are set to SMB2 and SMB3 from a performance perspective. As well as if you're ever experiencing any sort of like slow SMB speeds, this is sort of going to another question I got in terms of performance, right? And sort of tweaking, I guess, came up. Um, the clear SMB cache option, and yes, Finn pointed out that SMB multipathing is great. It's really cool. It is. It's awesome. It's very flexible. It gives you a lot of good performance for really any environment that you're working in. Got another question that came in about usage between NFS and SMB. And, funny enough, that question actually comes up with in a lot of our cases, even with more of our like enterprise size clients, because we do service quite a few enterprise clients. I, for example, work primarily with our healthcare and government companies. We do have an M&E team on the West Coast as well as the East Coast that handles media and entertainment. So we work in those environments pretty frequently. But between SMB and NFS, a general rule of thumb for virtual environments, right? Whether that's a hypervisor or Linux, right? Linux, you want to be using that NFS type environment because NFS is native to Linux, so it's going to work great. For everything else, Windows-based VMs, Windows-based systems, servers, SMB is really the go-to method, and that includes, of course, Apple now, since we've kind of gotten there, since they've gotten to the point where they're actually deploying SMB.
I'm actually following along with you and checking the same settings just to make sure I have it I have it checked. So if I'm quiet, it's because I was like, oh Jesus, do I have this set up properly?
No worries. And so there were a couple of other questions there that I wanted to kind of cover. I don't have them open at the moment
Oh,
actually. So I just
there were
I had
things
them
like
open, but I
RAID
get them
setup and
right.
options, how to performance tuning, sharing a mount point over the internet. That's actually a question that our friend Charles just had in the chat here. That he has a DS720 with expansion and a fiber connection to the internet and wanted to know what's the best way to share data over the net from his NAS.
Great question, right? So there's several different ways that you can share data over the net. So the first thing I'll go over is RAID and configurations for RAID. So what I'm going to do is, if everyone's familiar with DSM, or even if you haven't seen DSM, I'll give you kind of a general overview of that. First, we've got our package center, right? So package center is where you can get any type of first party packages that Synology makes, and we actually advocate for. So we do have some third party in there that we've actually sort of verified. In addition to that, we also have some backup packages and also push to cloud packages in here that are first party. So basically made by Synology. Um, I'm going to go ahead and jump into Storage Manager here. And Storage Manager is where you are going to be able to kind of build your RAID arrays. I actually just this morning deleted an array that I had just so I can kind of go through the process of creating that. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and click right here, Create Storage Pool. So we've got storage pools and we've got volumes. Volumes essentially live on storage pools. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click Create Storage Pool, click Next here, and then I'm going to select my RAID type. So you'll see three different types of RAID type, and I'll explain to you why we don't see more than that. Right now, I'm only using one hard drive, and that hard drive will only allow you to do SHR, which is Synology's hybrid RAID, a basic RAID, or just a bunch of disks, JBOD. Traditionally, when we have at least two drives, you're going to be getting other RAID options, right? Such as RAID 0, or RAID 5, RAID 1, RAID 6. Most environments, this is really, I think, an important fact, most environments are going to perform optimally in RAID 5. For those of you that don't know what RAID does, it basically creates redundancy in the disks. So if a disk fails, your entire array doesn't just come crashing down, right? So basically, that's what RAID does. So I'm going to go ahead and select our JBOD here. So we'll click Next. And I'm going to select that single drive. It's a 2 terabyte drive that I'm going to be able to create my storage pool on. Click Next. And it's just kind of popping up with a non-compatible drive. It's okay. I wanted to show this with a non-compatible drive and just kind of show it can be done. Not something we necessarily recommend, but we do have a list of compatible drives on our website as well. So this is going to give you kind of your settings for your storage pool, and we'll click Apply. So at that point, it's going to erase the drive, and it's going to create your storage pool. So after you've installed DSM on your drives and you've created your storage pool and you've created your volume, which I'm going to do next, you're essentially good to go. This whole process can take about 5 to 10 minutes max. So you basically just pop a Synology NAS in your office and you'll be off to the races in no time. So what we're going to do is click Create Volume here. And then volumes, you can kind of pick and choose how much storage you actually want on them, depending on how many drives you have. So for example, if you have a petabyte worth of drives, you can, maybe you can only select 500 terabytes, or maybe you only want to select 500 terabytes. So I'm going to go ahead and click Max here. We'll click Next. And then really important factor here, we've got 2 different file systems that we use in Synology. One is BTRFS for most tasks. BTRFS is going to be the go-to selection there. And then we have ext4. ext4 is going to be better for more of those much older systems, as well as surveillance. If you're doing any type of surveillance on your Synology, like as in physical surveillance, security, ext4 is going to be your go-to. But for almost everything else, we highly recommend BTRFS. So we'll click Next. Then we've got the option to encrypt the volume. I'm not going to encrypt this one, but this is where you would find it. We'll click Next, and then we'll click Apply. So what's going to happen now is that drive and volume is going to be created and provisioned. And it's also going to be indexed too. Oh, well, so that actually happened really fast. So what I'm going to do here is I'll go to File Station, and I'm going to create a shared folder. And you'll see here I have 3 volumes. This volume is the newest one that I created. And let's see. Let's do... we call it file images. And this is kind of leading into the next question, one of the other questions that we had as well. So I believe someone had asked something about creating, I want to say a data store or
a local frame store, but that's
frame store.
yeah, that's something kind of like Flame specific. So I figured I would answer
Okay.
that.
Got
A
it,
little
got
bit
it, got
later.
it. So I'll
Yeah.
let you go over that as well. From my research on frame stores, I'll definitely let Andy handle it. But you can mount one of these folders, a shared folder, to an SMB share on, like, let's just say a Windows or a Mac computer, and then you'd have that sort of targeted on the local computer. That was sort of the research that I dug up to that
Hmm.
question. But yeah, I'll let you handle it there.
Or even I can
And
just answer it real quick.
yeah,
Sinan,
for sure.
you just have to dedicate a folder, or make a folder inside your a shared folder inside your shared folder here. I have one called like NAS Stone or something like that, and in the Flame setup application, you can pick that as a possible destination for your Stone. And yes, to Charles' point there, it is definitely slow. It's not as, I mean, you're limited by the speed of the spinning disks and the bandwidth of your network, but we've all been in situations where, oh my God, my hard drive died, or maybe you're running your storage, your frame store off of a external drive or something like that, a local drive, and you're just in the heat of the moment, and you need to be able to set up, some solution that's on the NAS. You certainly can.
So great point about the performance. I will kind of direct the attention to the screen here in the NAS. I actually have four SSDs, enterprise grade SSDs, running RAID 0 in my primary volume, or my primary storage pool, I should say. So that's going to be really fast. So if I wanted to, I could actually install, someone had mentioned in the chat, a 10 gig NIC on my device, and then it would be really quick for these frame store type environments. So if that's a requirement that individuals have in the community, I would definitely recommend going down the route of SSDs, right, and creating kind of maybe a RAID 5 or RAID 10 or RAID 0 type environment, and back that up regularly for those frame stores. Yeah.
I'm going
So
to add one more
yeah,
thing to that. I'm
sure.
going to add one more thing to that, but I'll do it later. Just everybody, just I'll revisit that whole. There's like an SSD frame store caching solution, but I'm going to come to it a little bit later. Just,
Sounds great. And so I think that kind of, for the most part, handles most of the questions that kind of popped out there. There was another one about mounting a share remotely, right, over the internet. So there's several different ways you can do this, right? You could do a direct to website type link, right, where you could have a connection on a website, take data in, and then it would basically deposit the data on the Synology. Another thing you can do is Synology Drive. So Synology Drive is a solution that is, again, license free, and it allows you to create, let's just say, for lack of a better comparison, a Google Drive type environment on your Synology NAS that's your own personal cloud. So basically, you own that cloud, and any data that you put on it, you can share that with others, right? Who are also on your Drive environment. So if you have a small business, if you're multitasking, if you're working on projects together, um, then a Synology Drive would be a great solution for something like that. Um, so Synology Drive I use it on a regular basis, and it is really a cloud-based. It seems like a cloud-based environment, right, for your folders and your system, but it is very much so on that NAS. And so basically, I get a very familiar environment and ecosystem that I can kind of manage and look through, as well as download copies and then interact with those copies as well. One thing that I like to kind of point out about Synology Drive is that it's always best practice to, if you're doing any type of editing on the solution, maybe pull it onto your local computer, right? This is probably a practice that many of you already do if you are using data stores, but pull it onto your local computer, edit it there, and then put it back on the NAS, really the same way you found it, right? And there are some versioning settings as well. So someone had pointed out Synology Drive Server. Synology Drive Server is actually the sort of, I would say, um, the host system for your Synology Drive. So we'll see here Synology Drive ShareSync, and Synology Drive Admin Console. So that's sort of like the Synology Drive server type environment, right? So that's going to allow you to manage all of your endpoints. So you can have multiple desktop clients. You can have ShareSync set up, which actually syncs NASs. So if you've got a multitude of NASs, or two or three NASs in your environment, those can be sunk up in real time between each other, and as well as mobile devices. So I've got an iPhone, and any type of data that I create on my iPhone basically gets stored on my Synology Drive ecosystem as well.
yeah, I've used Synology Drive with, just to give our friends in the audience there just a kind of little context or little use case examples of it. I work with an editor a lot, And I've used Synology Drive to allow the editor to have access to a couple of folders in my project folder. Like the two things that we were always using like Frame.io for, to send things back and forth. They would send me like either raw or color graded footage, which I would then have to stop, download, move to the right place, and all that kind of stuff. And I would send them my renders and my comps, you know. And so those like live in two folders on my in my job folder. So I would share those two particular folders with the editor, so they could always send me something, and I got it, and I can always send them stuff, and they have it, and it really just worked. It was amazing. And then the other example is what I had mentioned before with like the time I worked with Randy, and then I saw in the chat here Sinan and Finn, who are in I believe it's Norway and Germany, respectively, were using, which was to sync or share, like whole job folders or whole projects, just to make sure that they're in sync at all times. And it allowed us when we were working. I think just as an example, when I was working with Randy, I was working on shots, and he owned the conform. So I went ahead and published all of my, or not published. I had write file nodes for all of my renders in batch, and then those just appeared in his timeline because the pathing was all the same. And we were writing out EXRs, and the EXRs were like 20 megs a frame, but our internet connections were pretty much keeping up. Every time a frame was written here, it was sent up to him in Chicago, and then he had it. And there was no sending archives back and forth and relinking to media, and it was just like, it was amazing. So we actually had, I think, 3 artists on the East Coast, all connected to Randy's Synology back in Chicago. So
Nice. Yeah, that's definitely a great case study, I would say, for the industry, right? I mean, Synology Drive is sort of our staple environment for those file servers. But let's just say you want to keep it old fashioned, right? Keep it familiar, and make a file server out of an SMB share. That's easily done as well. Or it's something that you can kind of get modular with, right? So, in terms of sort of linking a remote folder to, let's just say, an endpoint on a computer, I can easily go in here, go to my SMB SIFs share, and then I can then target a folder, and then an account name, as well as password on my system, and then have that mount to a specific folder, or shared folder, I should say, on my Synology NAS. So right then and there, you've tied everything in together, from the computer to the NAS. And again, if you have SSDs, obviously that process is going to be a lot quicker. So anytime you move a project, you move any frames directly onto a folder that would appear like any other folder in your computer, it automatically gets pushed right to the NAS. Right, so it's going to be a bilateral sync type environment too. So if you have someone else who pushes data directly to sort of like the GUI, right, or DSM itself here, which you're looking at, that'll also push that data to the local share too. Um, so the other way that you can kind of share data out. So let's just say we don't want to necessarily have anyone else accessing the NAS. The other thing you can do is, I've got my Tesla cam here, right? So we'll do recent clips here. I can actually right click someone, and then right click one, I can click share, and then I can do enable secure sharing. And then I can actually do public password protection. And so we can kind of then set a password. I'm going to make it hard, 12345 6. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to click save. So then what I can do is simply send this to a user. I wonder if there's a way to like pop it in the guest chat. I don't know.
oh, if you put it in our chat here, I'll I can throw it up on if you want. I can put it on the YouTube comments,
Yeah,
or I can just try to access it from here.
if anyone wants to try and download something, feel free. Yeah, I just threw it on the guest chat, or if you want to try and
All right.
access it there, feel free.
One sec. All right, internet, do your thing. There you go. That's cool. That's really cool.
So basically, really able to share out pretty quick. Again, this is 24 meg file there, but it's just if someone doesn't have DSM, doesn't have a Synology, and they want one of your frames or they want something, it's really easy to do directly through DSM too. Um, yep. So I think that I would say it was a very top level of some of the questions we got. Um, but yeah, I mean, let me know how you want to proceed there. But Andy, I think
Sure.
there's some things that you wanted to go over as well. Oh, one thing I was also thinking about. Someone had mentioned about it was one. The password was 123456.
We went with a
Right.
6-digit password to make it that much more secure, Charles.
Yeah, that's a lot of bits.
Dude.
Um, so again, I don't know what was on that repeater. I just want to let you know. For the sake of everyone here, right? I'm not sure what that repeater was recording. It was just a random repeater. But oh, that's the same one you have in your. Nice, Jeff. That's good. That's good. It always works for me too. But the other thing was someone had
Oh,
mentioned having HDDs, and we can actually do SSD caching as well, and that really pumps up the,
yes.
the performance. Yeah.
That's something I wanted to show. Before I jump onto that, though, just a real quick question here. I think about the file sharing. Jan was wondering, does that mechanism that you just used there rely on Synology to tunnel through the firewall?
Great question. So we're actually using a solution called Quick Connect. So Quick Connect is a protocol that Synology uses that does something like it's called hole punching. So very familiar to tunneling. But what will happen is it pings a Synology server. The data never goes through a Synology server. It pings a Synology server, which then pings the endpoint. And then what happens is you're able to actually share that data directly from the Synology over sort of a Quick Connect provided VPN to the endpoint or to the receiver, if that makes any sense. So basically, when you all are opening up that file, Quick Connect is then sort of sending a relay, and it's looking for best possible, most secure path to you from the NAS. And it's encrypted AES 256 from the NAS directly to you. It's a very closed environment and very secure as well. I'll tell you, in my time at Synology, I have not had any issues or security concerns with Quick Connect.
That is good to hear. As a user of Quick Connect, I'm very happy to hear it. I wanted to show, and this speaks to that SSD caching thing that Sananda mentioned, and then I promised to follow up on. So this is DSM for my NAS here. Again, it's a 6-bay machine, and one of the features about the 1621 or this unit that I have is it has 2 built-in M2 slots for cache. And I did some research on this before I bought it, and I was kind of intrigued. It really seemed like a lot of people out there, at least in the YouTube searches that I've done, were using that cache for like database management, where you're going to be writing all kinds of like little files, and so you can set these to read only, or you can set them to read write. But I went ahead and bought 2 sticks, and they were just 400 gigs, so they were really not very expensive, and striped them into RAID 0. So I have an 800 gig read-only cache, and I'll show you what that does, or what I found. And just full disclosure that most of the flame work that I do is shot-based. So I'm not dealing with a lot of conforms locally, and I'm not dealing with a lot of timeline stuff. I'm dealing with like one shot. And so what I was able to put together was this. So these are just some stock footage clips that I have here. But if you look, this is a 4K QuickTime movie. I believe it's ProRes 422. And then I have the same thing down here as an EXR sequence. But if I go ahead and play the 4K, so this is playing off of the Synology, and you can see it's playing fine. Like it's no drop frames or anything like that. If I go ahead, but when I play it, what it's really doing is it's copying it off the spinning disks and putting it in that SSD cache. And then every time I play after that, it's coming off the SSD cache. So if I go ahead and switch this over to the 4K EXRs, which is what I normally get when I'm working on shot-based stuff, EXR files, and I go to play that for the first time, you can see we're getting some dropped frames. Like either the spinning disks or my network here can't keep up with that amount of data or that bandwidth. But that first play was really just to put it in the cache. Oh, hold on. It's a live show, ladies and gentlemen. There's no pre-baked lasagna in the oven. You know? So yeah, okay. So now it's cached itself to the SSDs, and I'm getting, well, except for those 3 frames, damn it, I'm getting really good playback. But the bottom line is that after a couple of scrubs, I get the benefits of having an all SSD array for the one shot that I'm working on at that one time, without having to have an SSD array. Or the expense thereof, or that trade-off of like, well, I really need 50 terabytes of storage, but you know, I only have enough money for like 1 terabyte of SSD storage in terms of like as a multi-drive RAID. But I have the same thing here with a 6K clip. I've been getting a lot. I don't know about you folks, but I've been getting a lot of stuff in 6K and 8K. But yeah, so this is just playing that back off the SAN or the NAS rather for the first time. And then afterwards, you get much better performance. Oh, it's a live show. It's my first show back. I swear this worked in rehearsal. No, but even just scrubbing, you can see that, you know, I get much better performance. And when you're working on shot-based stuff, you're really working on 1 frame at a time. I think Brooks has a question, how long does it stay in the cache? I believe it stays in the cache until it gets overwritten.
You're correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, it's going to remain in the cache until the system finds that there's something that's more frequently accessed, and the cache is essentially full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, it was very inexpensive. There were 400 gigabyte sticks. You know, I want to say they were less than $100 each, if I remember correctly. And you don't need 2 of them. You could have 1, and kind of run from there. The other thing I did want to show is I did a Blackmagic screen disk speed test, whatever, on my NAS here, and this is the performance that I was getting over 10 gig with the 6 spinning drives that I have. So again, you know, use your judgment. If you're working still with a lot of HD material, you're fine. You know, if you're working with 4K material, but it's all QuickTime based, okay, you know. And I was kind of intimidated at the notion or the concept of having 2 different volumes, you know, of having 1 volume that was SSD and 1 volume that was spinning disk. How was I going to keep data synced between the 2? You know, I know that it's possible. I know it's possible to using symlinks to make, you know, a high speed, like a tier 1 and a tier 2, but that was more than I was willing to take on. So this caching thing really worked out well for me. And then the other thing I did want to show is I know us flame artists can be very paranoid people, worried that we're going to lose something. What if our data dies? So I think I'm just going to bring myself back up here with Doug just to kind of go over. When I first bought the Synology, I had the 1, and it was great, and I loved it. And I have never had a problem with it. I don't even think I've had it long enough. If anyone has any wood around them, I'm not going to say it. You know what? I'm just not going to say it. Thank you, Doug. It's not worth it. But I ended up buying a second one because the only thing that I became so dependent on it, and that the only thing I could think of, you know, as a point of failure was what if the power supply blew? You know, I bought the extended service warranty. I know I could get a replacement one very quickly. But what if I'm in the middle of a job? So one of the things you can set up through DSM is snapshot replication, or is the concept of snapshots. So at every time interval, every hour, whatever you want, you can make snapshots of your file system. It's like how Time Machine works for our friends in the Mac world. And I set up the second Synology. It's the same unit same drive configuration. I set that up as the target for the replication of said snapshots. So the snapshot's created, and then that snapshot is copied over to the other unit. And you can also schedule that to only happen like after midnight or something, or so it doesn't slow you down. And that way, if anything happens to the original machine, if the power goes out on it, I can I'm up and running again really, really quickly. The other thing I did, because now that I solved that problem and I was like, whew, everything's great, I realized I didn't have an off-site backup. I looked at cloud storage options, because in DSM there's a tool called, there's just like anything else, there's three ways to do everything, right? But there are options. There's cloud sync. I don't want to screw it up.
Yeah, no. So
Right?
there's a cloud sync, and then there's also hyper backup.
Hyper backup. I looked at cloud sync first. Let me just bring up my screen here. I looked at cloud sync first to do just that. I had been using cloud sync. Also, Flame Artist, you will love this. I had been using cloud sync to synchronize my batch setups, the iterations that I get from my batch setups, the text files. It's like your project files. To automatically synchronize that to a Dropbox folder. Just because they're small text files, just so I'd have, God forbid, thank you. As Jan just said here, 3 copies, 2 systems, 1 offsite. Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking of. So right with Cloud Sync here, it's very, very easy to create a task and say, copy this local file to this local path to a remote path, and then whenever I would, iterate a setup, that setup file was also copied to a Dropbox folder. But you have access to all of these different cloud providers. So if you would like to do this to an S3 bucket or anybody, you can. But cloud storage has a cost associated to it. And so I did some research, and there's another service or application here called Hyper Backup. And I went out and I bought one of the DS, well, now it's a 224, but the DS220s, the unit that we're giving away, it's a 2-drive unit. And my dear friend Josh Lawrence, who lives across the river in New Jersey, said, why don't you just give it to me, and I'll just put it in my house on my router somewhere. And so I use Hyper Backup here. And for just a couple $100, it really wasn't expensive to get that unit and put 2 larger drives in it. It just sits in Josh's house, and every night my Synology is backed up, or the important data, whatever I want, is backed up off-site. It was like I could either spend several $100s a year for that to do it in the cloud, or I could spend a couple $100 once, get another Synology unit, put it in Josh's house, and Bob's your uncle. And that's my story.
That's an awesome story.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Thank you. I'm gonna give myself some applause. I think I've earned it. Thank you very much. I think we all. This isn't just. I accept this award for everybody.
They're definitely awesome solutions. And someone had mentioned C2 as well. So Synology C2 is actually our cloud environment. And I think a few benefits to C2, I guess the extra value added there is that there's no ingress or egress fees. So for some solutions, you'll see sort of data in, data out type fees that will accrue. Synology definitely doesn't do that in their environment. And they all have native integration with solutions that Andy was just showing, like Hyper Backup and Cloud Sync too. I see a lot of Cloud Sync users out there. Finn, I think it seems like you're an advocate for it. That's awesome. That's great to hear. And always check out the Hyper Backup solution too. And I don't know. I mean, if it makes sense, I can kind of show sort of what a C2 backup or a full system backup would do for you.
That would be great. We have a few more minutes, and
Okay.
I just got the list of names of people who entered from for the prize drawing from your
Oh,
associate. So I'm gonna build that list. If you want to go ahead and
okay.
show how to use C2.
I can make it really quick here. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just jump on Hyper Backup, and I'm going to go ahead and click Create, and then I'm going to back up folders and packages. So we also have the option to back up entire systems, or LUNs. So iSCSI LUNs are basically small packs of data that live on the NAS that you can then connect to a Windows machine, hypervisor environment, and it basically looks like a disk, right, that's living there. So we'll click Next for folders and packages, and then I'm going to select Synology C2. And I'm already logged into Synology C2, so it's actually going to kind of pull up C2 here, and it'll log in. It'll tell me how much data I have available, and I'm going to allow it access to my Synology NAS. So I'll click Next. If I want to back up everything on my NAS very easily, all my volumes appear here, as well as my data. I'll just go ahead and select Data here. Let's do Engineering. So we'll click Next. I can back up my applications with settings too. So in the event that your Synology fails, you don't have to go through and kind of granularly adjust all of your other settings. You just pull that backup from Hyper Backup, and you can recover anything. So that I should point out that this is the backup. This is the way the backup for Hyper Backup is going to look, no matter what you're pushing to, right? So if you're pushing to a Linux box, if you're pushing to a Windows server, via rsync, something like that, or another cloud environment, you're going to get the same experience, right? So I'll click Next here. We have things like file change detail log, so that'll kind of tell you if any files are changing, or what has changed, because we do global deduplication, as well as compression. And then we can set up a backup schedule, which can occur as frequently as every hour for your backups. Click Next here. We can customize our retention to a variety of weeks, days, hours, years, and even months. Click Next, and just like that, we are off to C2. You can also do granular access to your data on C2 too. No, so a question was asked if we have to install Hyper Backup on each volume within the NAS. So the way that DSM works is DSM stripes itself across the entire set of drives and disks that are in your system, right? And so it uses up a portion of the data on the drives, roughly 9%. And so what that means is DSM doesn't have to be installed on separate volumes. It's the master, right? So it can basically see all the volumes and have access to them at the same time. It can even pull from them all at the same time. So Hyper Backup lives on DSM, and it therefore has access to all of your volumes. Good question.
I need one more minute. I'm
Okay,
almost
no
ready.
worries. So what I can actually do is I'll show granular access to C2 storage here, and I use Google. Who
And
doesn't use
and there
Google?
was actually another question that
Yeah,
I can throw your way. Absolutely,
sure.
yes. Actually, before we do that, I think it was Finn had mentioned, yes, when we were talking about making shared folders, that making permissions for subfolders can be a little cumbersome. Is there a workaround for that? I know I've seen that when I've gone to make shared folders for people.
I know exactly what you mean. So when you're making granular, like in terms of shared folders, you want to basically go in and give people granular access
Right, or
and,
like
and
I have
permission.
a job. Every one of my folders is in a has its own job folder or something. One folder for the project, and there are like 12 subfolders in that. One for editing, and one for graphics, and one for sound, and one for. And I want the editing to only go to the editor.
Mm,
I don't want that
mm.
editor to have access to anything else. And of course, there are subfolders inside of the editing folder. And so I know I found when I was doing the share, or creating the permissions for the share, it almost felt like I had to go from the inside, from the bottom up. Like I almost had to go to the bottom most subdirectory, and enable and work my way back up, as opposed to hitting from the top. Finn, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you will.
So in terms of permissions, I'll be on the lookout for anything from Finn. In terms of permissions, what we want to do for any type of granular access, first, if you have an Active Directory in your environment, you can kind of grant groups or individuals access to certain folders and files. So, I mean, that would be, I think, the easiest way to do it. But then I think Okay, as many steps as you said. Okay, perfect. So, Finn, correct me if this is maybe what you're not doing, if this is what you're doing. But what you'd want to do is you'd right-click the folder, you'd click Properties. You could just click, you could click Permissions, and you could essentially select the user that you want to give access to, right? And then after you give them permissions, you can either tell them that they can traverse right folders, or write directly to it. I should say traverse read folders or write directly to these folders as well. Or you can do advanced permissions, which will give you a little bit more options by way of access, right? So you can just say, hey, I only want this one particular file or folder to be accessed to these individuals. Is that what you're doing right now? Yes,
I'm gonna,
exactly. So Jen, you'd have
yeah.
to create separate Synology users for something like that. So you just create basically an editor, or an author,
Oh, I
a
see.
digital design artist. Yeah, that would be the easiest way to do it.
I see. Okay. I think we have time for one more question. It was something that Jan put in here. He had asked, and I think it's a recently added feature, the ability to make an immutable folder,
Yes, that is a very
right?
see. I feel like we should do a second one because there's so much stuff that we can go over.
You heard it here.
So, immutable
Doug's coming
folders,
back. Sorry.
really, really easy to do. If we click create, we can click create shared folder. I'll just call it immutable. I won't actually create it because immutability, if the term is new, to some of you, is the fact is it actually makes the data so that it can't be deleted. So it kind of will live on the system perpetually, right? And there are even ways to where if you break an SAT word, I love it. Um, so there's a way if you actually break the RAID array, it will it can stay consistent, right? So it's very protected, and we would select protect this shared folder with write once. And we have two modes, enterprise and compliance. Compliance is basically fully immutable, and enterprise is basically it gives the admin rights to delete and modify, but nobody else. And then we also have auto lock. So let's just say I accidentally, push my Harry Potter entire season or all the videos from Harry Potter to one particular work associated NAS. I can then have 2 hours to actually delete that data before it locks perpetually. And yeah, so that's an immutable folder. It is available on DSM 7.2 in any unit that is a 20 onward. So, for example, the DS 220 plus,
Mhm.
that'll have immutability. The DS 1619 XS plus, that's a 2019 unit, won't have immutability. And it's the last two numbers that denote the year of the unit.
Cool. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
really?
I guess that's by 20.
Yeah,
Yeah. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. So the first number is the amount of bays.
Okay.
So the second two are the year, for the most part.
Oh,
Yeah,
perfect. Oh, thanks. See, it's educational and entertaining.
yeah. So
Um,
720. So someone had asked about the 720. 720 goes up to 7 bays, and it's a 2020 unit. So you can actually expand that particular unit up to seven with an expansion bay.
cool. They say time flies when you're having fun. So we must have certainly had fun because we've reached the we're just shy of 3 o'clock here on the East Coast. So I want to thank you so much, Doug, for your time and your expertise. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I was following along, checking things off, learning as I go, and that to me is always the most fun, especially with a tool like Synology and DSM, because there's you could just mine it forever. There are so many things you can do with the software. It's just wonderful. So we're going to give away now a DS 224, 224 plus, I believe, right?
That's right.
Unit.
Yeah.
And I want to thank everybody who filled out the survey. And we have your list of names here in. Oh, thank God this
I
still
love
works.
this. This is awesome.
Right? This is great. This is the wheel of names. As this is all of our friends who entered. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle this up. Right? All right, everybody. Here we go. This is for
Good
all
luck,
the marbles.
everyone.
John Egg! Congratulations, my friend. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday in Sydney, Australia. And so thank you, John, for tuning in. It was absolutely worth it. He's our number one fan. Actually, he's our number one and our number two fan, just given the whole like date change difference. So, Doug, he's in Sydney, yeah.
Nice. Very cool.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm going to see you over in Zoom in just a minute. I'm going to close out the show, and we'll continue with our Patreon patrons and just dive a little deeper. I'm sure we'll get some great granular questions. Say that 10 times in there. And yeah, man, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on Logic Live.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for listening.
All right, let's close this out. My friends, we're going to be back to you with a list of what's coming up soon in Logic Live very shortly. So there we go. The first thing I'm going to do is remind everybody to sign up for the forum and Discord if you haven't already. And I have to thank Amanda and Glenn for all of the work they've done with the podcast lately. They keep churning out new episodes. There are quite a few in the queue already, like ready to go. I just recorded one yesterday. Glenn interviewed myself and a producer that I worked with for 10 years named Chris Decker. And we talked about bidding, from the producer, from the aspect of the producer and the flame artist. How do you bid a job? How do you bid a board? And it was really a fantastic hour. So that should be coming out in the next few weeks. Definitely check out. If you haven't subscribed to the Logic Podcast, please do. Because the interviews that Glenn and Amanda have been turning out have been fantastic. If you haven't also liked and subscribed our YouTube channel, please do smash that like button. As Randy likes to say, we're almost at 2,000 subscribers. That's very exciting. I want to thank all of our patrons again. If you'd like to be a supporter of Logic, please go to patreon.com/LogicTV, and we'll send you a challenge coin. Check out the Logic merch store. The holidays are right around the corner, and you want to make sure that you get that flame artist in your life, something that you know that they will absolutely love. If you're looking to get anything from the world of Boris Effects, be sure and use any of our new affiliate links. You can find all the affiliate links at logic.tv/BorisEffects, and they're also in the YouTube description. I want to thank our friends at AJA, Together with Flames since 2006. I want to thank the Hot Spring, the future of VFX outsourcing. If you need any help with any of your projects, you can just go to thehotspring.com and they'll get you hooked up. And that's going to do it for Logic Live. It's great to be back. I want to thank everybody, and especially Jeff Kyle, for keeping this party going these last several weeks. You guys are all great. I miss you all, and it's great to be back. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Here's your new music, Randy, wherever you are.